Okay, well, Rocky's decided to take a sleep on his coat. He loves that coat. That's a little coat that was left behind in the back of my truck, behind the seat. And I gave it to Rocky, and he really likes it. You like that coat, eh? It's a good coat. It is. It's a good coat for you, Rocky, to lay on and to have naps and things, eh? He was up on his pillow in the window over my head, but then he came down here, and he's now on his coat. Mm-hmm. My goodness, Rocky. Anyway, there's a couple of things have happened recently, and I think that they're connected. And I mean, this is just my opinion. I may be reading more into it than I should. But based on our Prime Minister here in Canada, Justin Trudeau's track record, um, I think that the unbelievable is believable. I really do. Things that normally would automatically say, oh, you're a crazy nut for even thinking such a thing. I don't think you can say that given his track record, really. I mean, there is some justification to believe that what I'm about to say can really be a thing. And I'm not saying I know it's a thing because I don't. I might be connecting things where I shouldn't. But I'll tell you what the two things are, and then you can make up your own minds, whatever you think it is. And, everybody's entitled to their own ideas. This is just my idea. Obviously, I'm the one speaking, so it's going to be my idea. But I understand that some people may hear what I'm going to say and think that guy's nuts. But I'll tell you what the two things are anyway, without further ado, because there's nothing worse than a bunch of ado. All right. Don't you just hate ado? Anyway, the first thing is he recently, while giving testimony about the possible Chinese government interference in our last federal election, and for those of you who don't know, there's another scandal. The Trudeau government has a scandal a week. I think it's obligatory or something. I don't know, but seems to have a scandal every week. But there's evidence that the Chinese government interfered in the last election where Trudeau got reelected. Um, and there's an inquiry going on about that now, and he gave testimony at that inquiry. Talked and talked and talked, but said nothing. You could say there was a bunch of ado in his speech, because that's what it was. It was all ado. He said nothing, really. But one slip up, or possibly a slip up at least, that he made is he mentioned the election that will be coming up in 2025. Now, under Canadian law, that's an election he has to call. He's not allowed not to call that election. He can only be in power for so long before he's required to call an election. He can call an election any time prior to that. He could call an election today if he wanted to. But there's a limit as to how long he can be in power before he has to call an election, before it becomes mandatory, and that's the law in this country. What he said is, the 2025 election, which is most likely to occur. Which is likely to occur, that's what he said. Well, what does that mean, which is likely to occur? It's mandatory. It has to occur. There's no likely about it. It has to occur if we're following the law of the land. So for him to say that, which is likely to occur, I mean, if you were working at a job and you worked all week and tomorrow's payday, and your boss comes to you and says, yeah, I'll likely pay you tomorrow. Well, you'd have some questions, wouldn't you? You'd be saying, wait a minute, I didn't likely work. I did work. I worked all week. I earned my pay. Payday is tomorrow. What do you mean you will likely pay me tomorrow? You know, is it not a certainty? Did you pay me tomorrow? Do I need to be worried that I'm not going to get my pay? I mean, you'd ask those kinds of questions if your boss came to you and said that. Anyway, that's the first thing. He says the election is likely to happen, which indicates that he may decide it isn't going to happen, or that it may not happen for some reason. I'll put it that way. Maybe it won't be because he decides it isn't going to happen. Maybe there'll be some other reason why it might be that there wouldn't be an election, but in 2025. But when he says is likely to, I mean, legally there has to be one. I mean, if you're driving a car and you say, well, I think I'll likely stop at that stop sign, well, no, you will stop at the stop sign or you're breaking the law. That's the thing, If you don't stop at the stop sign, well, then you're breaking the law. So there is no likely about it. You will stop at the stop sign or you will be guilty of infringing the law of the land. Anyway, that's the first thing. The second thing is he is passing legislation through now that will enable the Army to be used against Canadian citizens, the Canadian Army. Now, this is a big thing because under Canadian law as it stands now, our Army cannot be used against us. They can use the police against us, or they can do what they did during the trucker convoy when they brought in foreign mercenaries, when they brought in United Nations troops to brutalize those people. They can do that. Legally, they can do that. Now, the Declaration of the War Measures Act, or I guess now they call it the Emergency Measures Act, has been declared illegal by a court in Canada. And so everything connected with it then automatically is illegal. But still, there's no law that specifically says they can't bring in United Nations troops to go against the Canadian people. There is a law, though, that says that the Canadian Army itself cannot be used against Canadian citizens. That's what he wants to change. So I'm putting the two things together in my head. And I'm thinking, okay, is he going to declare himself some sort of a ruler for life or something? Like, what's going on there? Is he going to declare himself dictator? King? God? Messiah? What's he going to, was he going to declare himself something like that and basically say, F the election, we're not having one? I'm your leader, and that's how it is, whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, well, I've got the Army behind me, and they'll come and tell you that you do like it, or else. See, this is what I'm wondering, because, there's just too many things. I wouldn't put anything past him at this point. I really wouldn't. He's done such awful things. And that nasty piece of work there, Chrystia Freeland, with her sniggering and smirking and all the rest of it, just nasty, just a very witch-like woman, nasty. She's another one. I think she may even be worse than him, really, I do. I don't know what the hell's wrong with her. I mean, I don't know if the two of them are coked out or demonically possessed or what the heck's going on with them, but the two of them together they're a pretty scary combination, I'll tell you. And I don't put much past them anyway, and I don't have any faith in Pierre Poilievre either, really, I don't. Because I've noticed he's conspicuously silent on these issues, on all the censorship bills and on practically everything. The only thing he's been outspoken against is the carbon tax. And good on him for that. I'll give him that. I'm glad he's outspoken about that because it's something. And the carbon tax is creating real harm. It's causing terrible hardship in this country. It costs me now $300 to fill the gas tank of my truck. $300. I don't have $300 to buy fuel. That's not, I don't have it. That's what it costs me. In order to fill my truck up, I've got to have about 3 days of work. And I mean hard work. The kind of work I do is hard. I enjoy my work. Don't get me wrong. I love my work. But it is hard work. It's physically hard work. And it takes its toll on me. I'm a 55-year-old man. I'm not in perfect health. I'm not even in good health for somebody my age. I mean, I told in other videos about what happened to me when I was 8 years old and how that's affected me health-wise. And so it is hard on me. As much as I love it, and I do love it, it is hard on me. And I got to do that for 3 days just to have a full tank of gas in my truck. It's insane. And that's down to this government with their carbon tax. And I know if people are struggling. I mean, people are having to decide, do I eat or do I heat my home? And the thing is, even if you don't drive, it affects you because everything is delivered by truck. Diesel truck. If it's costing me $300 to fill up a half-ton pickup truck with gasoline, imagine what it costs to fill up a tractor trailer. If it's costing $300 for me to do that, what's it costing to fill up a tractor trailer? It's got to be a lot more. And right now, diesel fuel is more expensive than gasoline, which was never the case before, but it is now. Diesel fuel has surpassed gasoline, expense-wise. Anyway, bottom line is that raises your grocery bill. That raises the cost of everything you buy. You go into a store and you buy something, part of the cost of that item is the cost of transporting it from wherever it originated to the store. That means prices have to go up, If it costs more to move the stuff, then the prices go up. That's how it works. So, good on Poliver for being outspoken about that. And I do believe that if somehow we do have an election and he actually ends up being prime minister, I do believe that he will, as he says, axe the tax. I think he'll have to because he's talked himself into a corner. He's harped on that tax, and rightly so, but he's harped on that tax constantly. But as far as all the other bad things that are being done goes, he's conspicuously silent about them. Is he going to repeal all these censorship bills? He hasn't said. He doesn't talk about that stuff. Is he going to turn things around if the army ends up being capable of being used against Canadian citizens? Is he going to turn that around and put it back the way it was? That the army can't legally be used against Canadian citizens? The Canadian army? I don't know. He hasn't said. He doesn't talk about this stuff. He just doesn't mention it. So I really don't know. But the bottom line is this. I don't think we're really going to vote our way out of this situation. I have a bad feeling about that, even if there is an election. And I'm in doubt now as to whether there even will be an election. I have a feeling that Trudeau is going to declare himself some sort of an eternal ruler, the way that the original leader of North Korea did. King for life, basically. And when the Canadians rise up, he's going to have the army at his fingertips to put that uprising down. And here, the thing is, too, with that, good people are not going to join the army. If you know you could be used against your fellow citizens in that way by an abusive leader, you're not going to join the army. Why would you? So what are they going to have then? Compulsory service? Is that going to go with it? And if good people don't join the army voluntarily and aren't forced to be in it, then who's going to join? Who's going to be in the army? It's going to be people we don't want in the army. They're going to be some pretty nasty people in our army. There's going to have to be an order for the whole thing of the army being used against its own people to come to fruition. I mean, you got to be a totally unprincipled lout. You got to be just a total lout of a man, to do that, to actually turn your weapon when you're in the army against your fellow citizens. The army's job is supposed to be to fight against foreign invasion, to fight for the interest of the people against those who would come in and harm the people. It's to protect the people. It isn't to be a threat to the people. That's not the army's job, and it should never be the army's job. And the reason I use the word lout is because when I was a kid, my cousin Alan, and I've told some stories about my cousin Alan, he was really brought up like a wild animal. He was. And he was a pretty rough going customer anyway. I grew up with him. He was a little younger than I was and than I am. And he was a bad little bugger. And my dad used to call him the lout. That's what he used to call Alan, the lout. So that's why I think that is a real word too. I looked it up one time, and it is a real word, which just generally means an all-around bad actor. Just generally a bad character. Anyway, you would have to be that type anyway to join the armed forces under those conditions, where you might be required to turn your guns against your neighbors, your friends, your relations. You might have to shoot your dad. You might have to. You might have to shoot your uncle or your brother. What if you and your brother find yourselves on the opposite side of things? You might have to shoot your own brother. You have to be an awful person to want to be in a position to have to do that. So we're not going to get good people. We're not going to be getting the best and the brightest people in the army if that happens. And anybody who is a decent person is going to be wanting out. Big time. They're not going to want to stay in an army where they may be required to go against the citizens who when they joined the army, the whole purpose was that they were to protect these people. There's Rocky. He's sleeping. He's got his face buried in his coat. Anyway, that's the bottom line. Just wanted to share that with you. Like I say, it's a theory that I have of what's going to happen. I really hope I'm wrong. I'll be more than happy to be wrong, because it's too horrible. If I'm right, it's really horrible. It's just that the two things, that slip of the tongue that Trudeau made, saying that, the election is likely to happen, likely to occur, and when it's actually mandatory under Canadian law, and the fact that he's now trying to get legislation through that would enable him to turn the Canadian Army against Canadian citizens, which as it stands now is against the law. That's why they brought in foreign troops to go after the trucker convoy. They couldn't use our own army against those people because those people are Canadian citizens. It would have been a serious breach if they had tried to do that. And in fact, the Canadian Army would have been within its rights if given that order to refuse to obey it. And in fact, they would have been legally obligated to refuse to obey it, as things stand now. But he wants to change that anyway. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. It's looking pretty bleak. I'm sorry. I wish I could talk about sunshine and lollipops and rainbows everywhere. Well, we do have rainbows everywhere. We do have them. We do. We got crosswalks and flags and everything. The rainbows flying everywhere in Canada. All right. We'll talk to you later.